if you really want to change the business, you want to change the people. If you want to change the people, one place to target is to target the mindset by understanding what goes on in the brain. So for me, when you think about business strategy, so people think strategy is just this logical thing. As long as you've got a strategy, you're going to be able to get to your goal. But when you look at companies worldwide, only 30% of strategy are successfully executed. And of those, most CEOs believe they're too slow.
What's going on? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm even better now that I know we're going to jump into a conversation that I don't precisely know about, but I just know that a lot will come out of it. So
It always does. It always does. Especially, I think the last time when we talked, you even mentioned like there was just a good energy. Like there's
yeah,
just good energy going back and forth. And hey, we might even be in different worlds, but like energy is so powerful for connection. And I want to dive a little bit into that. So first of all, explain to everybody just who you are and what you do.
so I do a lot of different things. I think relevant to this particular podcast, I am a certified master executive coach that uses my background in psychiatry and in brain science to help leaders at Fortune 500 companies develop strategies and lead more effectively to build more resilient, agile, and creative teams. So my background's in psychiatry. I trained at Harvard. I also ran a part of the Brain Imaging Center, and I work in biotechnology across medicine, looking at drugs in early stage development for cancer, heart disease, stroke, and neurodegenerative disease. I just finished writing a musical, and then I co-founded two tech companies. The company that I'm working the most in right now is called Roulet, which is an AI-driven platform that we actually offer to businesses to help them develop sort of healthier longevity through mindset shifts. So a lot of people feel like you just have the mindset that you're born with or the mindset that you get up with. But what we realized is that people could really benefit from having science-based mindset shifts. So if you're feeling pessimistic, you could become more optimistic. If you're feeling distracted, you could become more focused. And we use video art to try to capture this. And we do a lot of other things on the platform. We have cognitive interventions like growth mindset tips. We also have these video experiences. When you have nature-based art, we have geometric art, and we have fractal art. We also have these celebrity journeys where we show brief clips of celebrities talking about their own challenges and then give tips in association with that, and a bunch of other things. So I'd encourage people to check out the Roulet platform. And I think you and I can talk about this and even give people some free access for a while if you think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, of course. Everybody loves free as people are jumping into the live stream here. Everybody loves free, and also it gets them to experience it and kind of test it out and see what's going on there. Why
Yeah.
why why is why is mindset so important to you?
Well, when I started doing this work, people would be like, why is this neuroscientist coming to talk to businesses about something? And I would say,
Yeah.
well, businesses are made up of people, and people have brains. So if you really want to change the business, you want to change the people. If you want to change the people, one place to target is to target the mindset by understanding what goes on in the brain. So for me, when you think about business strategies, like people think strategy is just this logical thing. As long as you've got a strategy, you're going to be able to get to your goal. But when you look at companies worldwide, only 30% of strategies are successfully executed. And of those, most CEOs believe they're too slow. So how come when you have a
Mm.
nice strategy and it's written down and it makes sense to you, and you think, like, what's going on that you can actually execute on that? It's not just not doing it. You'll have all kinds of mental blocks, obstructions, and a lot of times people don't realize you need to connect with another part of your brain because thinking for strategy is not just linear. It's complex. And as I mentioned to you, my last book, which is sort of Tinker Dabble, Doodle Try,
Yeah.
Unlock the Power of the Unfocused Mind, is about explaining that in the brain you have a kind of linear, circuit, which is for, what do I need to do in this week, this month, how do I build my brand? But you also have, when you stop focusing, you turn on another part of your brain, which is this unfocused circuit called the default mode network. And that part of the brain recalls memories that your logical brain can't recall. It's also better at abstract thought, and it's better at complex thought. And most entrepreneurs will tell you that it's just not straightforward to build a brand and build a business. People say go on Instagram and
Yeah.
say something and make it short and
And you'll get
post.
customers.
Yeah. The customers don't just show up from, there has to be some other piece of magic. And this circuit in the brain is what I believe the magic circuit is. Steve Jobs used to say, you have to believe in something. Like, you can't join the dots moving forward, but you have to believe in something. Gut, karma, life, destiny, whatever. I call that something the default mode network. And that's why I wrote this book, to help people understand how you can tap into this network to boost your entrepreneurial game or to boost your game as a CEO of a company.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, especially about that stat that's very, very interesting about the 30%. But I can see it. Most people, they talk all day. All they do is talk. They strategize, plan. And then I'm like, by the time you're doing all that, people are already doing things. It's amazing. There was a story that I think I forgot her name, but the story was that Elon Musk, when he was starting to position his companies, and there was an issue, so he was on a flight, I think, with a bunch of engineers on the flight, and then he was like, they were talking about kind of like, hey, how long things are going to take to actually get into production. And they were talking like years to get this stuff done. And what he said, he's like, okay, well, what are the problems? And then they started to brainstorm the problems. And he's like, all right, you know what? Turn this plane around. We're going to go fly to the plant of where the problems supposedly were. And they ended up solving all the problems within 2 days. And so it turned from 2 years to 2 days of actual action. So to your point, like, why do we drag ourselves through the mud of trying to execute that stuff when really at the end of the day we want the outcomes?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest blocks most business people and entrepreneurs face is they stop having a possibility mindset. They just work from probability. And they're like, what's the likelihood of success? If you're an entrepreneur, the likelihood of success is very low. You probably shouldn't do it if you're following probability. What you want to do as an entrepreneur is be that exception, right? You want to be that person who's going to succeed. And so for me, like, even on the Roulet platform, we have a possibility mindset channel to help people channel that. Now, I'll give you an example from my own life. It was interesting. And when I was at medical school in South Africa, which is where I'm from originally, it was my final exam, and I was talking to my examiner. My examiner happened to be from NYU. And I did well in my exam, and he said, you should really be at Harvard. And I was like, I didn't really know anything about Harvard. I was planning to potentially go to the UK. And I was like, yeah, it must be difficult to get into Harvard. How do you do that? And so I forgot about it, thought it was a good exam. I did well. Then I went to a conference the next year, and I went to this guy's talk, and I was so lit up by that talk. I was like, whoever this person is, it's unbelievable. Like, I love what he's talking about. And he stood next to me. And when our car was coming to pick me up, I just looked at him and I said, I just went to your talk, and it was pretty amazing. And he said, thank you. And then I just said something who would say this? I said, I have a funny feeling that you could influence the future of my life. Can you just say anything? And he looked at me and he goes, what do you mean? I said, but I don't know. He said, but what are you interested in? I said, well, I'm interested in the brain, and I'm interested in like human moods and mindsets and how they function. And he said, well, there's a scholarship tomorrow. Why don't you apply for it? We've never given it to anyone of color. We've never given it to anyone in psychiatry. The chances you're getting it are close to zero. But if you get it, it will change your life. And it was due the following day. I sent it to him, and he took it over to the committee, called me a couple hours later and said, congratulations, welcome to Stellenbosch, which was kind of like, crazy. I go to that university for a year to study neurochemistry. And I decided one day, I think I just want to go to Harvard. But like, how do you get there? Now, logically, strategically, most people would say, call up the dean, talk to somebody. I was just like, we could hardly use the internet then. But what I did was I picked up the phone. I went through several exchanges until I said, I want to speak to the head of Harvard. And they were like, head of Harvard what? And I said, just the head of all of Harvard. They were like, no, sir, there has to be a department you're interested in. Undergraduate, medical school. I said, medical school. So I go to the medical school dean's office. They go, oh, you want the Department of Psychiatry head. He happened to be in his office. His secretary had stepped away. He picked up the phone, and I was like, hi, my name is Srini Pillay. I'm sitting here in my small dorm room in South Africa, and I'm thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great to be at Harvard? Now, I had done very well, but there are a lot of people who do well who wouldn't pick up the phone and call somebody. And he said, well, you told me later, I thought you were crazy. But what I did was I just said, send me your CV. I'll circulate it and see what happens. A couple of weeks later, I get a note saying, Dr. Jonathan Cole wants to interview you. He was the father of psychopharmacology. I have a phone interview. A couple of weeks later, I get a FedEx envelope. Congratulations and welcome to Harvard. Now, is this like a logical way you get into Harvard? Like, it's not logical.
Not at all.
But for me, it became an emblematic of when you're working with a possibility mindset, you're just looking for the way to get to where you want to get to. And you'll have a million obstacles along the way. But if you don't have a possibility mindset, you're going to go back to, well, that's not likely. We're probably going to fail. Sometimes that's helpful. But I think for most people, learning to develop a possibility mindset, to say, I want to make what is. Like, I want my business to be the most successful business in the world. And I want to start that today. So let me just, if anything takes me off course, I'm coming back to that. And it's not just that, obviously. You have to still take action. You have to have a product. You have to sell the product. But the energy with which you sell the product, it makes all the difference in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just so powerful. I talk to so many different people. I hear their stories, and it's always something of someone taking a chance on themselves, usually also going in a route that's not typical, and then also asking for help. So we have to be willing. I just posted this today actually, that we have to be willing to ask for what we want. And you would never went down that path if you just didn't open up and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I would like to do. You put it out there in the universe, and it just came to you. But also you took advantage of it too. So it wasn't just like like you went down the easy street. It was you took advantage of the opportunity, and you placed a bet on yourself, which is, it's just so, that's what hinders people from doing a lot of anything, is they don't ask for what they want. They kind of just wait for the world to just lay it in their lap or show them something, when really you just got to ask a little bit more. So that's super powerful. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons people don't ask is because they're afraid, right? They're like, someone's going to think I'm crazy. Like, why did I not have the thought someone's going to think I'm crazy? Because I had my eye on a goal. I was sort of like, I got to get there. But fear is one of the things I've studied, because I ran an outpatient anxiety disorder service at Harvard. And I often will teach people a simple 5-step process. If you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're feeling like, I don't know how this product's going to get to market, I don't know how I'm going to market it, there's a 5-step process that can change the brain in order to help you release that fear. And it's defined by the mnemonic CIRCA, CIRCA. The first C is chunking. Right? You don't have to take on the next 10 years when you're an entrepreneur. Right? When you're an entrepreneur, you want to have a vision, but you also want to say, how do I chunk this out? What am I going to do this month, the next month? Because the moment you do that, the amygdala, one of the anxiety processes in the brain, starts to calm down, and it lets you think more clearly. The I is ignore mental chatter, which basically, the mind is made to be like a monkey. Basically, it's like running around chattering. You can't do this. How are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? You got to have some way of bringing stillness, whether it's with music, with something like Roulet, whether it's with meditation. The moment you teach yourself to ignore that mental chatter, you actually can calm the mind down so that your strategic brain has some space to think. The R in CIRCA is reality check. So let's say something terrible happens. You don't get around to funding, or your product fails, or you realize that you don't have the money to do something. The first thing you say is, this too shall pass. Otherwise, if you don't use self-talk, and when you use self-talk, it changes your brain. And this reality check is super powerful to help you do that. The second C is control check. which is, you know, only pay attention to the stuff you can control. You get up in the morning, you look in the news, terrible things are happening everywhere. Sure, you can empathize, but why use up all your attentional units thinking about stuff you're going to be doing nothing about? And then the last A is attention shift, which is how can I stop thinking about the problem and now I want to bring my attention to the solution. So it's
Mm.
CIRCA, chunking, ignore mental chatter, reality check, control check, and attention shift. And those five things have been shown to change the brain so that the anxiety brain calms down and your strategic brain has space to think.
Oh my God. It's so beautifully said too. And it makes sense because I know we've all been there. We totally have
Right.
all been there. And then actually we got somebody in the chat, another mindset coach, it looks like. So this is so fascinating. Thanks for sharing. I mean, it everybody goes through this stuff, you know, and most of the work too is also in our mind.
Yep.
Once we can get through whatever's going on up here, a lot of the things that we create really in our own reality, it's all starts from here. And then as long as we have the power, the knowledge, um the ability to, I say, unlock our self-awareness. So everything that you just said with those steps is unlocking your self-awareness.
Right.
And the more self-aware you can become, the better you are at taking advantage of opportunities and also understanding like where you're going, and then also how to stay on the right path as well,
Right.
which is just absolutely incredible. I want to ask you, because one thing I found about you that's extremely unique is your ability to live in both worlds of creativity, but also science and predictability, and just like honing in on truth. So how, I guess first the question is why? Why do you live in both these worlds where you're writing musicals, you've designed fashion shows? I mean, it's very it's not normal for people to run into people like you. So why is that so important to live on both sides of your brain like that?
So for a couple of different reasons, right? So if you think about, um, when you were talking about the self circuit,
Yeah.
so like how self awareness, the self circuit in the brain is actually the brain's unfocused circuit. So if you're just focus fatigue the whole day, your self circuit doesn't come on. The who you are, who you really are, comes on when you stop focusing for a while, and you allow, whether you're taking a booster break, or you're in the shower, or there's a thing called positive constructive daydreaming where you don't just daydream, you do something low key while you're letting
Mm.
your mind go. When you
Yep.
do that kind of thing, it allows you to integrate all these intangibles about yourself. Now, as a business leader, you have to execute on the business, but you have to do it as you. People always say you've got to find your why. I believe before you find your why, you've got to find your I. You have to figure
Mm.
out, who am I that I can do this business. Now, for me, I trained in music. I love science. I studied the arts and the sciences. I started a technology company. To me, these things are not separate. Like, there are two views on what's separate. Like, some people believe that the world was born with creativity and science in different departments. Now, these things are also served by the one brain.
Right.
Your Whatever creativity is going on in your brain. A great example of this is Da Vinci, right? I mean, so his whole idea of being able to draw precise mathematical things, but also have the artistic capability that he had,
Yeah.
explains that science and creativity are not outside. It's not like one person has a scientific brain and one has a creative brain. There's some genetic component to it, but
Yeah.
it's small. There's actually, most people can develop creative capacities. Most people can
Oh.
develop scientific capacities. If you tell girls, for example, if you just leave them as they are and they take math tests, the boys outperform them by far. And everybody says, well, see, I mean, girls are just not good at math. Well, if you take that group of girls and you prime them and you say, you can do this, you can be at the top of your class, they do as well as any boy.
Mm.
So it's not about what your innate capacity is, it's about the limit that you've placed on yourself. And so for
Yeah.
me, music inspires me. art inspires me. I like having fun. I work hard and I play hard. And for me, working hard and playing hard is how I get work done. If you talk
Yeah.
to anybody who I work with, they would probably tell you that my level of productivity is very high. And I work long hours, but when I'm out playing, I like to play. And so I feel like creativity for me is a place that also informs what I'm doing in unexpected ways. So if you think about Steve Jobs, for example, and his whole idea that his whole idea about the Mac and Mac fonts came because he went to a class on fonts, and he didn't know why that was relevant. But later on, that inspired a whole aesthetic in what the Mac came to be. And if you think about what's phenomenal about an iPhone, or it's the original design thinking that was an art form that informed this technology. So
Hmm.
I don't believe that art and science need to live in different domains. I think that artists and scientists can talk to each other more. In fact, that's one of the greatest passions of my life. I want
Yeah.
I want to bring these worlds together, because I think that's how you're going to bring a lot of people in the world together, where the artists can inform the scientists can inform the art. When I studied music, I realized after a short period of time that this was very mathematical.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is kind of interesting. Like, how is it that these two worlds come together,
Yeah.
music and math? And so I would say for any business leader, if there is some part of your life that you feel you're inspired by, in order to have intrinsic motivation, there's a theory called self-determination theory. But one of the key factors is autonomy. Be yourself and you do you. And if you can be yourself and you can do you, it activates the intrinsic motivation circuits in the brain, and you feel more motivated. Like if someone came to me, I've had many conversations, and I respectfully disagree with venture capitalists who believe this, who've said things like, well, you probably should be focused. And I was like, I just wrote an entire book on why the unfocused brain can augment your thinking. Like, and this
Right.
is based on the science of unfocused. Just because you like to focus doesn't mean I should want to do this. I heard Will Smith say this one time. He was in this movie where he said, everyone will tell you in life, you should be this or you should be that. And it's like, you should be you,
Yeah.
because you will really regret it if you fail not as you.
Yeah.
If I gave up on my music, I mean, I said, no, I'll just focus on one thing, I would never be able to function. For me, ruthless prioritization is important, right?
Mm.
And so I feel like if you think about a classic day, I know what priorities I need. I know what I need to get on this tech platform. Nothing's going to get done unless it gets done. So for
Yeah.
me, that part and building the science around it is critical. But I also know that we have to keep on thinking about the design of the business. Like design is one of those things that's left out of many entrepreneurs' thinking, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fundamental. If you listen to Bernard Arnault, the founder of Louis Vuitton,
Yeah.
when he talks about what is the person who grew it the most, when he talks about what makes him successful, he says it's a combination of creativity and practicality. And when his son talks about how he made it, how he grew it, he said everybody thinks he's a mastermind with spreadsheets. He's got the best businessman in the world. That's not his strength. His strength is to unleash the power of creatives.
Mm.
When you bring Mark Jacobs in there and you say to Mark Jacobs, go to town. When you bring Virgil Abloh into there and you say, like, I mean, it takes guts to hire someone as
Yeah.
your head fashion director who has no background in fashion.
Right.
He's got a background in architecture and engineering. But Virgil Abloh said, it's all the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
It's like you think of the structure of the jacket, and then you also think of the functionality of the jacket. And he produced some amazing pieces that have changed the world of fashion, really.
Yeah.
So, Marc Jacobs, for example, when Bernard Arnault hired him, I think he decided he wanted to make these newspaper dresses.
Okay.
And people were like, that's ridiculous. Like, no woman's going to wear a newspaper dress. Like, what if it rains? What if there's like,
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
he was like, no, don't stop the creative process prematurely. Let's have a fashion show inside. And so people came in with the dresses. They were on the runway. And then they had a eureka moment. They were like, you know what? Let's make this out of material, but let's use newspaper print. And so they changed the material, but he gave his creative ultimate liberty to see his imagination in
Right.
front of him. And once he could see that, he could move there. But I think most
Yes.
business leaders that you talk to, if you talk to Satya Nadella at Microsoft, for example, he single-handedly changed the business financials of that company. Well, not single-handedly, I mean, probably with the rest of his company, but there was one instrumental thing that he changed. He changed it with growth mindset. If you Google Satya Nadella growth mindset anywhere online, you'll
Hmm.
see that that was central to his strategy. He wanted people to stop saying, no, we can't do that. That's the limit. And to start saying, I don't know how to do it, but I just know with effort, I'm going to get there. And
Yeah.
so I have to figure out how to make mistakes and then grow.
Yeah.
But in each of these examples, Steve Jobs with his design sensibility, Bernard Arnault with combining creativity and organization, Satya Nadella in inspiring the growth mindset, there is an inkling that it's not just about pure logical execution. There's something about combining creativity and the science of organization that makes most businesses tick.
Yeah. And you have to have that. I mean, I don't see any, especially with inventions or anything that's new into the world, you have to be creative in that approach. I mean, and then even in the execution. So going back to the beginning of the podcast, we talk about execution. As you're executing something, there's something magical. There's a magical moment that normally happens in execution where you get hit with some roadblocks of things that you didn't plan for, the things that you didn't strategize for. And it takes creativity sometime to make things work, to think on the fly. Oh, we didn't anticipate that, but now that we know that, but maybe there's a world that we do this, or maybe we do this now with it. Oh, I didn't know we were going to get introduced to this person, but maybe they could be a part of this. And then you start to develop, but that's the magic of execution. That's why I'm more of a believer in execution than strategize all day and plan all day. I mean, I think it's very critical to plan. I mean, you don't want to just like dive into stuff left and right with no plan, but there's something magic about when you actually execute, because then you're doing the activity, and you need both sides of the brain to actually produce whatever the goal is. You have to have it. And a lot of people will try to lean heavy onto one side or the other side. And I love how you just think about the world in this way of combining both of those platforms. And you're not just talking about it too. A lot of people will talk about it. Srini, you're doing both sides of it. You're in this, you have science, you're in the tech, but you're also in the fashion and the music, and you're living and doing both sides of it. It's just awesome to see.
But I think it's important to embody what you feel, right? And um, to actually continue. Like even for me, there's no like final answer. I'm always growing. But there's a concept I wrote about in my Substack yesterday, which I wanted. I don't usually like this term because it's always used a little bit shallowly. But there's a term that's called dharma, and dharma generally means it's a Hindu term that refers to purpose,
Yeah, I think
but
I've
it's
heard of this before. Yeah.
but it's different from serving other people. What it is serving other people with your unique skills. And so if you're not just asking them like, why am I here? You're also saying, why am I here to showcase what is unique about me? And I think that we often sterilize our uniqueness so we can look like what we imagine some kind of entrepreneur is supposed to look like.
Right.
Or what, but look at the people, just go in and look at the top 20 richest CEOs in the world. They don't look alike. They look very different. They
Hmm.
don't behave in the same way. They have some similarities. But I really believe that the more we can understand our uniqueness, the more we can figure out what our unique contribution in the world can be.
100%. I mean, I think it's the key, because once you find out you, um and then also you find your tribe or the people that will celebrate you, that see your gifts and your talents, and you're not trying to blend in, you're just being yourself. Some people want to really blow that up. I mean, they see that in you, and they're like, oh man, there's something special about you. and then they want to give you an introduction. They want to extend out an invite to you. They want to give you an opportunity because you're showing up in your own unique way, and people can feel that. Is there a real vibration that really people can feel? Because I know with me in particular, people always say they feel a certain energy,
Yeah.
or when they're in, especially in person, like the aura of just like, they're like, man, I've had people be like, there's something about you, man. I don't know what it is, but dude, there's something's gonna happen. I don't know what it is, but like, I just need you around, and I've gotten invited to all types of stuff. So is that a real science, like the science of it? Is there really vibrations? Is there some kind of energy level that we're all giving off?
Yeah, well, I have felt that about you, so I understand what that feeling is.
Yeah.
That you do. So there's a lot of different perspectives. One perspective is called mirror neurons. So in everyone's brain, there are a set of neurons which are specifically wired to mirror other people's actions, intentions, and emotions. So when you show up, like those people bum you out sometimes. They come into the room, they're like, hi, hi, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh God, and you're not just reacting to them. Their emotion is getting registered in your mirror, and all of a sudden they live in your head as that sulky person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, I don't want this person in my head. Like, how do I get them out of my head? And by then it's too late. But when somebody comes in with a positive intention, and they come in with a positive emotion, it mirrors in your brain, and then you feel enthusiastic about it because we have mirror neurons. And then there's a multiplying effect, because then my excitement's mirrored in your brain, your excitement's mirrored in mine. It goes back and forth.
Yeah.
So, I think the more we can create positive mirrors around us, the stronger the connections will be. Because,
Yeah.
when you think about strategic speed, it was Davis and colleagues who wrote this book, looking at, what are the factors that help strategic speed in companies. They looked at the fastest companies in the world, some of the slower ones, and they found there's just three factors. It's clarity, not certainty, clarity,
Mm.
unity, and agility. So clarity, unity, and agility. So let's break that down, because what does that mean? It means
Yeah.
that when you get up every morning, you don't have to be certain about what you're doing, but you do have to be clear about what you're going to be doing. And you have to bring that clarity to everything you're doing, whether you're constructing a product, whether you're marketing the product, whether you're selling the product. Clarity is essential. The companies that are the clearest actually are the fastest. Unity is what we're talking about with this mirror neurons. You
Mm-hmm.
create a culture where people are just jazzed. They want to go. They want to go and say, let's do it. The CEO of Roulet and I, Patrick, he actually approached me, and we're both co-founders of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Boston. I was in a more academic life. I was sort of, and this guy people contact me on LinkedIn. I don't usually respond to them, but there was something about the energy in his photograph. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I should contact this person. So I contacted him, and he had like a very respectful conversation because he felt he was talking to a Harvard psychiatrist, something. And I was like, I'm going to New York because I was living in Boston then. And I said, yeah, but why don't we meet? I'll meet you for 30 minutes. And I was thinking, I don't really want to spend longer than 30, because he was going on about health in a way that was like a little bit boring. And so I meet him at my hotel, and I had an upside down day. I was about to go out. He looked right past me, because I came down in a Swarovski crystal jacket and a Swarovski crystal tie. He was looking for a Harvard professor, and he was like,
Yeah. Like, there's three. Yeah.
And so I go up to him and I say, hi, it's nice to meet you. And so he goes, it's nice. So I said, do you want to have something to eat? And he was like, yeah, I've been eating like steamed fish mostly recently. And I was like, yeah, well, sure, you can do that. He said, I'll get a steamed fish and some water. And I said, well, yeah, I've had a crazy day. I don't always eat like this, but I'm getting a hot dog, popcorn, and martini. And he looked at me and he goes, you're getting a hot dog? Like, you're a doctor. Like, and a martini? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, I'll get one too. And fast forward to 30 minutes after that, we were both rocking out to tunes on the street of New York, running around. And I was like, I can build a company with someone like this, like where there's fun, there's togetherness, there's unity, there's connection, but we're also super focused on what we want to have achieved. And when you have unity is really like it's not just about let's hold hands and kumbaya. Unity is about like, let's be connected because we actually are connected. Like, it's when you think about you and I, like you're somewhere else, I'm somewhere else, but we're feeling connected. How?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we are, because the human brain is more like beads in a chain, joined by consciousness. And I think agility is really about not being afraid to change your strategy. Like when we started Roulet, we were thinking we'll create a platform for calmness. And then I was like, you know what? This is not really us. I was like, we're not like, I always, even on my Twitter profile at the time, I said I was somewhere between martinis and meditation. Like I was like, we like to have fun. We don't just want to be engaged, alive. And so I said, let's just switch this over to mindset. And now in the mindset space, it's opening up so much more that's real because I think it's who we are.
Hmm.
But even then, I think we'll continue to be agile. And I think every entrepreneur would benefit from thinking about those three questions. Am I clear? Do I have enough unity? And am I agile? Because those are the guiding factors for strategic speed.
Yeah, yeah, for strategic speed. And I agree with every single one of those. I want to highlight something really quick in your story because I always tell people how you position yourself is so important. So the whole reason why you have a co-founder in the first place is also he shot you a message, but it was his picture, his profile
Right.
picture. He said, this looks interesting. So once again, I don't know what that profile picture looked like, but it was something intriguing enough where you were like, you know what? I'm gonna respond back to this. Why not? Why not? Let's see where this goes. Looks interesting and looks intriguing. And often tell people with their personal brand, like always make sure that you're positioning yourself correctly and that your profile picture is something that it looks like you, it's your characteristics. It has to be expressive. It needs to be something that captures somebody's attention and not the same old headshot that everybody else sees where you blend in, where you kind of like I'm sure you've dismissed a ton of those, those messages. You're like, it looks like it's somebody I went to maybe to college with or something. Like, I don't know if I want to go into that.
I have it. It's also, for me personally, it's still a challenge
Yeah.
because, I have people, I'm all kinds of people. If you see me during the day, I'm hyper focused in doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If you see me out, you'll see me in these crazy clothes, wearing whatever I feel like wearing, doing whatever I'm doing. And people are always like, I actually hired a pretty serious branding company to help me think about my brand. And my brand was at the time, and it still is Neuro Business Group. So I
Yeah.
work as Neuro Business Group with companies,
Yeah.
helping them develop leaders. And I was like, can you just, research what I'm doing? And at that time, I also had these T-shirt designs that I'd been looking at that had all these. There was slightly provocative sort of brain-related themes, like
Okay.
fill my think tank and like like things.
Yeah.
And what was funny about it was they did a like a proper branding thing, and they said we don't think you're like in the position in the right space. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you should change your name to Neuro Gangsta, like GANGSTA. And I was like, what? Harvard trained psychiatrist and brain researcher, works in biotechnology, presents Neuro Gangsta. Like
Yeah.
what?
Like, how's that gonna work?
And I still don't know because there's something to what they're saying that
I see
that
it though.
that I'm
I
not like expressing in my life, and that's a real challenge for me.
Yeah, yeah. That's but I see what they're saying with it. I think I think with you it might be more imagery. To be honest. Like sometimes even like with the music and the fashion stuff that you do, I think being more expressive into all those other different areas of your life, but showing that expression visually, I think might be one of the keys that they were kind of saying. I don't know about
Right.
a neuro gangster. I don't know if you want to
Right.
go into boardroom saying that,
Right.
but they can know at least a little bit about your brand of what you give off of who they're going to get when you show up, and
Yes.
that may be a little bit different. But it's so having a brand and just having that to break the wall and make that connection is just so important. I loved when you also said that you're in between you said martinis and what was the
Meditation. Like
yeah, meditation. That needs to be on your LinkedIn tag, like
right.
it's got to be there. because I feel it. I feel it. No, this is awesome. I think on how we all grow our companies. I think the way on how you also articulate all of this, and I'm seeing a lot of things here also in the chat that people are loving kind of like how you're laying out things. And one thing I want to say, how do we, and maybe and I just want to understand from your point of view, how do we build the right team around us though? So when it comes down to leadership, when it comes down to now we have a little bit more clarity around maybe how we can look at ourselves, how we can show up. How do we build that team around us? Because and it seems like you've built great teams even around yourself in all the business ventures that you've done, and it's in different capacities, from fashion, music, from science to tech. How do we build the right team around us to get us to where we're trying to go?
So there are a couple of things I'll say that I caveat. So the first is, it all starts off with what it means to you to be a leader. And my favorite definition of leadership is probably one from one of the most famous researchers of leadership, who's Warren Bennis, who said, after all these years, he died close to 90, his eventual conceptualization of leadership was becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It's precisely that simple and also that difficult. And that captures it, because it's very hard to be all of who you are. Like, I might freak someone out if I went in a Swarovski crystal jacket.
Yeah.
And and I always say to people, like, why? Like, I'm still me.
Yeah.
It's just like what I'm wearing because I feel like doing it. But becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. And then you ask yourself, well, what is the self? Now, remember I told you we have mirror neurons? Now, mirror neurons are where other people impact you. So you feel their emotions, you feel their intentions. So when I work with CEOs and they say, who do you think I should hire? I say, do you want them to live in your brain? But anybody you hire, like when I
Oh
see
man,
you,
that's good. That's
yeah,
good. Oh
because
man, I've never had anybody word it that simply before. Never.
yeah, because it's like, well, the person I'm seeing right now, like I'm talking to you, you are not just an image on a screen. You are literally living in my visual cortex. You are living in my hearing cortex, my auditory cortex. So your persona has become part of my biology, which is kind of amazing, right? That
Yeah.
who you are and my persona has become part of your biology. Now, if you gather a team of toxic people around you, you're gonna have like toxic here, toxic here. You want
Yeah.
that in your head? It's like I don't want that, and I don't even want to get into toxic fights about it. So I think that one of the clearest ways to begin to develop a team is to unite around a mission and a vision, but not just cognitively, energetically.
Mm.
Like our chief revenue officer is someone it was Tim O'Connor, who Patrick Candela is known for a long time. They've worked together. Like, we're all different people, but we unite energetically around just the way we interact in the world.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of fun together. We laugh. We're similarly predisposed. Like, people talk about diversity, and I think diversity is helpful if it's not obstructive. If
Hmm.
you have one person who is against your goal and another person is for your goal, it just slows you down. You have to strike the right balance. So I would say that the first thing is know who you are. The second thing is ask, who do I want to live in my head? Because if I know who I want to live in my head, I know who I'll choose to be around me.
Yeah.
And the third is to ask, well, what is our common vision and energy? And does everybody feel independently motivated to do their thing? Because one of the things I most enjoy is, I don't need for Patrick to tell me. Well, he always jokes. He goes, "It's so fun with you." I was like, "Do you need anything else?" It's so much fun not telling you, because you try to read what I want, then I get it, and then it feels like magic. Like,
Yeah.
I just want you to keep working your magic. And I was like, "Don't be ridiculous. Like, what do you need now?" And he goes,
Yeah.
"Trust me. I trust you, like implicitly. Just do your thing, because whatever you do, it's usually what I need." And so,
Wow. That's
you know,
that's a high level of trust.
yeah, so it's kind of, it really is, it works much better than that, because then, you're doing what you're doing. Not everybody has the same schedule, not everybody has to control everybody, but we all have the same dedication to the goal and the endpoint and the timeline.
Yeah.
So I don't think you get a lot out of people who need to be controlled. I think people, there was a thing that I actually saw, which is an interview, an HR interview with Satguru, and they were talking to a bunch of CEOs, and they said, humans are not resources. Humans are possibilities. If you think of them as a
Mm.
resource, then you're just going to use what they've got. If you think of them as a possibility, you're going to ignite what they've got because they are possibilities.
Everybody's got to work with you, man.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to work. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews. I've interviewed amazing, amazing individuals, and I'm going to continue to do it. The way how you describe things and the way on how you look at the world, like this is what people need to tap into. Because I hear that resource. I've spoken for huge HR conferences, especially with the Change Your Circle, Change Your Life. People trying to figure this out. How do we get into new environments, learn about new different people? How do we get them into our organization? So I get pushed and pulled to speak all over the place. They're all talking about resources. And you said we need to look at people as opportunities. And that is it's just such a better framework of for your mind to think about somebody, because that's what I do. That when I look at somebody, I don't think of them just as a resource to get them, to pull out what they have. I look deep into I somebody just told me last week that it's like I look at what people's inner star is, and I figure
Yeah.
out how to ignite that within them. And that's how I look at every single person, because oftentimes I see something in themselves that they don't even see. I'm like, oh man, you're really good at that. And I'm like, you'd be perfect for this. And I start to orchestrate and do my Picasso thing. But to your point, like that's the way these leaders need to think about their people as what the opportunities are, and not simply as a resource, especially for large organizations.
Yeah, because if you think about like another concept that I sometimes will speak with people about is a thing called self-organizing leadership. And self-organizing leadership, the metaphor for that is the way birds fly. Like when you see a flock of birds flying, the leader is not going, "Hey, come to the left, come to the right. Hey, come." They're they're following the leader. Like they are organizing themselves from their own volition.
Mm.
And I think that when you're hiring people, I would look for that quality. Look for that the self-motivated. I want to organize. I want to figure out how we're going through the world together. Because for me, life is a dance, right? And it's a
Mm.
lot of fun when it is a dance.
Yeah.
And when you're having a ton of fun dancing, like I like some choreographed dancing, but what I really like is just letting go. And when you find a rhythm with someone, and you're in that rhythm, it's pretty incredible. There's studies done on what causes people to synchronize with leaders. And
Mm.
what they did was they took a bunch of leaders and they gave them a question, uh, and then they were in groups of two and they had to figure it out. So they attached EEG leads to their brain so they could look at their brain waves. And what they found was the person who was chosen as a leader was the person who initiated brain synchrony. They had a way of determining who initiated that, and they found that if you initiate synchrony, that person says, "Hey, you're a leader." So sometimes we go to meetings and we're like, "Man, this is gonna be such a boring meeting. Now I hope these guys do what I want. Like, I've got the dream, but I don't know about them." Or you go to a meeting and you say, "Everyone's so like different here. Like, how are we going to get on the same page?" Well, what if you initiated synchrony and said, "Okay, we're all a bunch of different people here, but we've got something in common."
Hmm.
Right? And you're beginning to initiate what that synchrony is. And being able to initiate that synchrony, I think, is key to forming teams. So I think when forming teams, number one, just think about who you are, because becoming yourself is really what being a leader is.
Yeah.
Make sure that the people who are around you are people you want to be living in your head. Thirdly, unite people with a common purpose and vision. Fourth, remember that people are not resources, they're possibilities. And then ask yourself, how can I ignite this and allow them to become self-organizing so that we can do this together as a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. Oh, it's so powerful, man. I could talk to you all day. I could
Yeah,
talk
I
to you
could
all
do it.
day.
Yeah.
You have so much wisdom, and I can tell you really know what you're doing. Like, I mean, to really unlock these things out of people, lead them and down the right path. Um, yeah, you're incredible, absolutely incredible.
Thank
This is
you.
one of my
So are you.
yeah, this is now one of my top favorite interviews, I would say. And like I said, I've interviewed a lot of people, a lot of great people. But this is definitely one of the top ones. And so how can people learn a little bit more about your book? Um, and how can they get connected to you?
So my books you can find on Amazon. Tinker Dabble Doodle Try is the one I've just been showing you.
Yes.
But in addition to Tinker Dabble Doodle Try, I have a book called Life Unlocked: 7 Revolutionary Lessons to Overcome Fear. I have one that's called Your Brain in Business: The Neuroscience of Great Leaders and the Science Behind the Law of Attraction. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I think that would be awesome. My Instagram handle is Dr. Srini Pillay, DrSrinipillay. It's the same on Twitter and it's the same on LinkedIn. And you can also follow me on my Substack. I've created a thing called Recipes for Success, 52 weeks of lessons, so that in a year, people will ask themselves, like the concepts we talked about, they would have asked themselves, just in a brief way, 52 important questions, so that you feel your forward-moving development and you feel your momentum. And you can see me on my website at nbgcorporate.com or at roulet.com or at drsrinipillay.com.
Awesome, man. This has been incredible. I know a lot of people have gotten a lot of good stuff out of this episode. It's been absolutely incredible. Everybody go get Srini's books. I know I'm getting the books. This is absolutely incredible conversation. And I know you helped a lot of leaders here today. And I know everybody also live in the chat is absolutely loving this. If everybody listening, watching, please like, comment, subscribe to the Forever Podcast. We're streaming on all platforms. We're everywhere. And share this with somebody. Share this with somebody. Don't be stingy. Go ahead and share this with somebody that needs to hear it, that really needs to elevate their mindset, elevate who they are, become a better leader, and ultimately help those and serve around them. I mean, that's what this is all about. And don't forget, everybody, if you can change your circle, you can change your life. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for more amazing content that we're going to be putting out. And don't forget, you can change your circle to change your life.